Hey guys, today we're going to cover a topic I think is relevant to modern AR-15s that are being sold today. We're going to cover the difference between the direct impingement gas system and the gas piston, or short stroke piston gas system, or by any of their names, the piston system in an AR-15. Now, some of you are going to know right what I'm talking about, some of you aren't. For you new guys out there, basically what this means is on semi-automatic rifles, there's a hole on the top of the barrel, or the bottom of the barrel, somewhere on the barrel, that when you fire a round, gas travels just behind the bullet, is captured in that hole, and travels through a system, either a tube or a spring that pushes back on the bolt carrier and cycles the bolt. It basically is what lets your gun fire semi-automatically. It's why you don't have to reload it by hand every single time. I'll show you how it works when I disassemble these two guns. What that relates to is in the AR-15 is it originally had a direct impingement gas system, and there were some problems with it in the first generation, and over time the direct impingement system was fixed. However, in the last probably 8 years, a lot of piston AR-15s have come out. People have not liked the DI system since it came out. A lot of people are misinformed and still think this is 1967 and it doesn't work because the ones in Vietnam didn't work, and I guess they don't figure nothing improves over time. But anyway, or some people just like it because it runs clean. We'll get into that. But anyway, there are two basic different types of gas systems in AR-15s now. There's the direct gas impingement system, which is the most common and the least expensive, and the piston system, which is a little more expensive, and but it's known to be a little bit more reliable. So I'm going to go into these today, and I'm going to use these two rifles, and I might roll in a couple other ones that if I think they're relevant to the conversation. But below is one of the high-end gas piston guns. This is my LWRC. This is an M6A2 model, unless you guys have seen me shooting this. And above is my kind of Franken gun that I've thrown together, which is mostly Colt, and it's Spike's Tactical AR-15. It's reminiscent of the ones most people kind of built. It's got a little bit of everything on it. So I'm not going to just tell you about it. I've got my tools out, and I'm going to show you how they work, and we'll compare the two and explain the difference between them. And hopefully, if you're shopping for an AR-15 or you've got one already, you want to know what the big deal is and if you're missing out on anything. So let me take the top off one of these here, and we'll get started. All right, this is your standard direct impingement gas system. There's a couple different lengths these guns come in. This is the mid-length. There's a carbine, which this tube is a little bit shorter, and there's a rifle length where it's a little bit longer. For right now, that's not going to make a difference, but they all work pretty much the same way. And I'll give you an idea. Of course, this is where the bolt carrier group would normally sit inside the rifle. So, what happens is, you squeeze the trigger, hammer comes up, fires a round. Round comes through here, travels down the barrel, and right about here, there's a hole in the top of the barrel. I'll try to find you guys a picture so you can see what it looks like. Small hole, bullet continues on. Now some of the gas comes up through this hole into the gas block. Now on this gun, this is a front sight gas block, so it's got the gas block and the front sight built in. All the AR-15s have some sort of gas block, and all of them can be a little different. This is the A2, this is the most common. So anyway, this area has got a hole, and it comes up, and this tube has a big hole on the bottom of it that sits directly above the hole in the barrel. So the gas would come up, come through this tube, come back down through this tube. These are aluminum or stainless steel. They're made to be corrosion resistant. And it comes back inside the upper receiver. And I'll try to get you a light in there so you can see the tube. You see it right there? And that sprays high pressure gas into the top of this bolt carrier group. And it causes the bolt to release, the bolt carrier group to slide back, and of course the ejector and extractor to throw the round out. It's a pretty simple design, which is why it's been used for a long time. It's simple and it works for the most part. However, because of this design, there can sometimes be problems. That gas isn't exactly clean. It's got a lot of carbon in it and other molecules. So what happens is gradually, over time, this area where the locking lugs are on the inside of the gun gets coated in dirt and grime and carbon buildup. And all the hot gas is coming back in here too, which is making it hot. So you're going to have a section that over time is going to get hot and sticky. And what'll happen is your bolt carrier group will get in there. Oop, hang on a second. And as it closes and it tries to cycle, all that gunk and carbon buildup will cause it to stick, and it won't lock up. It will, first of all, it'll sometimes when it cycles, it'll go to about here and it won't fully close. That's why they added the forward assist button on the early AR-15, so guys could push it in there and close the bolt. Now, in your normal everyday shooting, you don't ever want to use it, because if you do this and something's wrong, you could cause your gun to explode. But this was meant for combat, where that one bullet might save your life, and it was worth the risk of having your gun destroyed, because better your gun than you. But anyway, all that carbon and dirt builds up in the chamber, and it builds up because it's being sprayed on the end of the bolt and causes them to get gunky and sticky. Now, in the first M16s in Vietnam, this was a big problem because the ammo was very dirty. These gas tubes weren't corrosion proof. The troops were told by the Army that these bolts didn't need to be lubricated or cleaned, which Eugene Soner did not tell them. They just decided to make that up as they went along. So you have all this carbon buildup. You have areas where all this carbon's going through, the heat's going through, and if you know anything about machines, an unlubricated machine is going to start not working eventually if it's a metal-on-metal contact, and that's exactly what would happen. Rounds would get stuck in the chamber. They couldn't extract them, and you'd see guys who were killed with their rifle in half trying to clear the rounds out of here, and they would have to have a cleaning rod trying to hammer the round back out. Now, once they figured this out after a long trip through Congress, the Army was trying to blame it on the troopers because they were all draftees and thought they could get away with it. They basically fixed the problem. In the Army, they switched to a cleaner burning powder. They adopted stainless steel or aluminum gas tubes. The chamber was chromed and the barrel was chromed, which they weren't originally to save cost. And chrome is extremely resistant to corrosion and a lot easier to clean, and is pretty much resistant to lots of forms of carbon buildup. So basically they fixed the issue. Now the M16 or AR-15 is still complicated, but most of the feeding issues that happen with it, which isn't very often, are now caused by magazines. The USGA magazines were designed by Stoner to be disposable, and now they don't dispose of them. They keep them around forever. A lot of them get weak springs, and now a major problem with these guns, when they do happen, is usually a feeding issue, like a double feed. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still gunk these up, especially if you have a poor quality build, but there are plenty of videos on YouTube made by lots of different people, gun companies, and individuals showing their AR-15 shooting 5,000 or 6,000 rounds, not cleaned, on a standard DI gun, and the gun's still functioning. And they'll wipe their finger and have a huge chunk of grease on it. This will be completely caked and still work, because the design has been improved. It's a lot better than it used to be. But I just want to give you that basis, because that's where a lot of the BS on the AR-15 and M16 comes from, and that is one of the design flaws of the old first generation design. So, like I said, I wanted to show you guys exactly how it worked, and we'll put this sucker back together, and we'll show you how the piston system works. Alright, so after a little bit of fight with the handguard on the other one, got it back together, and I got this one apart. Now, this is the LWRC gas piston design. First thing you need to realize, not all gas piston systems will look like this. And we'll get to that later, but this is a general idea of what happens. Superficially, it's kind of similar to the, as far as the layout on the direct impingement design, but there are, of course, differences. Here's the gas block. Like I said, they all take different designs. This is a low-profile gas block. Gas comes through a hole in the barrel, just like the other gun. Comes up through here. Now in this design, it's got a gas piston So the gas, instead of coming through a tube, comes back in this piston system and pushes this rod into the chamber. So gas comes up, goes in here, and pushes this rod. This rod's actually two parts. There's a part here that goes into the receiver and an intermediate part here. So the gas pushes it back, and instead of coming in, we'll show you, and spraying in the gas tube, that little rod comes back and smacks the top of the carrier, bolt carrier, and pushes it back, and it unlocks the bolt and cycles like normal. There's still a hole. Get you this. In the upper receiver, of course, because that rod, so you can see it right there, pushes on the gas key, which is why you see a lot of conversion kits, because it uses the same basic design as the AR-15, just changes the gas system. Now, the upside to this is you don't, of course, have all that gunk blowing inside of the chamber. So, you, without that crap blowing in there, it doesn't get as dirty, obviously. I just shot this gun about 300 rounds, and you couldn't really tell because it wasn't dirty. Now, I was using a Wolf, and which is an exceptionally dirty ammo. You can't tell in this one. I don't know if you could tell in the other one because it was a black bolt instead of a silver, but you could see a little bit on there, but it wasn't much. But this one looks clean all up to about 2,000 rounds before you start seeing a little bit of dirt on the end of the bolt carrier group. That one will start looking dirty after about 500. It doesn't mean it'll stop working, you'll just be able to tell it's being used. So let me reassemble these two now that you get an idea how they work, and we'll talk a little more. So you're asking yourself, that's all well and good, so what's the point? Why is there a big difference? Well, like I said, you know, the difference to you would be ultimately the direct gas impingement system gets dirtier faster. For your average everyday shooter, that's the only difference it's really going to make. And what that translates to you is, how often do I want to clean my gun? Now, some guys are really anal, and as soon as they get done shooting, they take it home and they clean their gun. If it's 1 round or 1,000 rounds, they take it home and they clean their gun. What this situation has to do with, for the most part, is if you think you're going to need to shoot a buttload of rounds at something, be it Civil War, be it urban conflict, you know, do I want to have to worry about my gun getting gunked up to the point where it may not work? Let's be realistic for a minute. That's probably never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Also, let's be realistic. Most of the DI guns will probably shoot 5 to 10,000 rounds before that may be a factor. If you've shot that much, you're either in one hell of a firefight and you've already burned out your barrel, or chances are you've probably had lulls in that much fighting, which gives you time to clean your gun. Be honest, I have the piston gun, and after that, after 1,000 or 2,000 rounds, I'd clean it anyway, and it wouldn't make a difference. So if that's what you're basing this decision on, if you're looking at these two systems and you're like, well, I want to be able to shoot forever and never have to clean it, be realistic for a minute. You're going to clean both of them anyway. Either the other one will get gummy eventually, and the bolt carrier will start to have a little bit of sticky problems, 20, 50,000 rounds later. But by the time you shot that much, you're going to have other problems with the gun anyway, if it has any problems. So let's get that one out of the way. Let's do a little more realistic scenario. Do you want to own a suppressor on your 5.56? Suppressor's pretty cool. Everybody likes them. They're expensive, but they're not completely out of the reach of a normal person. If you're going to run a suppressor on your 5.56 for sure, then you definitely want to go with the Piston. A lot of them are adjustable, and with the gas regulation system on them, on even the non-adjustable ones, it's a lot easier to run that gun set up with a suppressor. You don't have to fiddle with the timing and the buffers that you have to do on a regular DI gun. Now, if you're considering sometime maybe in the future getting a suppressor, you might, kind of have to weigh that a little bit. But like I said, keep in mind, it'll still work on a DI gun, of course. Military uses it on a DI gun. And you could convert it to piston, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So that's a more realistic scenario. If you know out the gate, yes, I want to run a suppressor on my gun, then yes, go ahead and spend the extra money and get the gas piston system. It'll make your life easier. And that's one of the most things, the thing that you need to consider the most in this, is between the two, is the cost difference worth the extra money? And really what it boils down to right now is the extra money, is the cost worth it, and how much extra will it cost? Now, I bought both of these guns before the gun buying panic went out. I haven't checked prices recently. I heard people tell me what the prices are. So, my prices may be off, but I'll try to give you like $1 difference. It should still be the same. My LWRC without optic, with brand new, was $2,000. That gun at the top, that DI gun that I built out of spare parts and Franken-gunned it, was about $700. Now, that doesn't mean that DI guns are all that cheap. For example, let me show you this one here. You guys have seen me shooting this. I really like this. This is my favorite DI gun. It's my LMT 16-inch barrel match gun. That was an expensive DI gun. That was about $1,400, and that was before all this gun buying panic broke out. We'll get to why I have it configured like that in a minute. Excuse me, need some water. So, I need to take that into consideration. If you buy a DI gun and you want to convert it to gas piston, if that's what your decision is, it's about $300 to $400 for the piston conversion kits. The ones I've seen work really well. There's the off-spray piston conversion system. That seems to work really well. The one I've tried that almost everybody I've seen likes is the Adams Arms gas piston system. I'm pretty sure CMMG, or MG, however you say it, also makes a gas piston system. And I looked on AR15.com, and there was a couple other ones too. I haven't seen anybody trying them, but I've shot the off-spray myself, and I had a lot of time actually shooting a friend of mine's Adams Arms kit. And it was really good. And the big thing I liked about it was, on the LWRC you have to tab these thumb screws to get to the piston system. It's not hard, but if you have anything on the sides of the rail, you have to take it off to get to it. The Adams Arms, you just twist the plug and it pops right out, which makes it a lot easier to clean. And that's another thing you need to consider about these guns too. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around. Is all that gas and gunk that goes into the chamber of your standard AR-15, it still gets made. It doesn't disappear, you know, into Narnia. All that gas and dust comes up here. This front end of this gas block gets hot, and up right underneath of the barrel on this gun, all that carbon and copper deposit gets sprayed on the barrel. Now, it's not hard to clean off. You just get yourself a toothbrush in there, and it comes right off, a little CLP. But, you know, it's still there. And, of course, the gas piston system gets dust and gunk inside of it. It just doesn't slow down your gun. It takes the heat out of the chamber and puts it at the front of the gun, which is good. Keeps your bolt running cooler. And the front of the gun doesn't have any moving parts. You know, the piston system's it's just a big metal rod that goes back and forth. It only has to make one motion. You could gunk that up with about almost anything. It'll still run. The gas block is two pieces of metal with a hole between them. There's nothing moving. So unless something physically gets in there and blocks it, it's going to run. And the gas coming out of there is about, I think, 20,000 PSI. So, you know, you're talking at something 10 times the speed of the wind's on freaking Neptune. There's not much that's going to get in there and block it. You know, so there's a big advantage for it as far as overall reliability in the long term. You know, we're talking excessively here. So, like I said, suppressor is a good reason to get it. If you're just insane about reliability, it's a good reason to get it. If you get a DI, you want to convert it, those are good ways to do it. But there's some things you want to consider that favor the DI. If you are shooting for extreme accuracy, you want to go with the DI system. It's a more accurate system, relatively speaking, than the piston system. And I'll explain to you why. Is when you guys saw that, that piston setup, you see that piston would go back and forth inside the upper receiver. That is a motion inside the gun. So you have to figure when you pull the trigger, you got the explosion going out, you've got the bolt carrier coming back, and you got the piston coming back. All that motion affects your accuracy to a certain degree. So when you're shooting for extreme accuracy, you want the least amount of motion possible. That's why when I built, same gun again, my LMT, LWRC LMT, I went with a DI system because this gun I built to fire over a pretty good range for an AR-15, 300 to 600 yards, which I think is pretty good range for it. Granted, it's a 16-inch barrel, but I did that for a whole different reason. If you want to know why, you can watch that video. But yes, if you're shooting for extreme accuracy, the DI system is superior. It has less moving parts. Also, the DI system actually has less parts in it. It doesn't have the whole piston arrangement, so it's simpler. There's gas rings on the bolt carrier for the AR-15. I'm not really sure exactly 100% what their role is in the system. I don't know that much intricacies of AR-15s as far as the absolute nano engineering part of it. I know that they're gas rings, and I kind of know what they do, but I could make a whole different video explaining what they do. Even I am not really qualified to say it. But the point is, there's less parts on a standard AR-15. And that leads me to another thing. If you're one of those people who's building this gun for the apocalypse, and the off chance it breaks, you guys saw the spring that was in the Piston kit. Those could break. LWRC system, the one that's good with the gun, was supposed to be originally good for 5,000 rounds. I believe they eventually either changed it out or make one, or have said now that it's unlimited. I can't remember. It's something like that. My point is, though, is that it's a non-standard part. So you need to take that into consideration. If you buy one of these piston guns and the company goes bankrupt, are you going to be able to find the parts for your piston system if it breaks? Some of these are completely integrated at the factory. Can you find the parts for them? Now, I don't think the piston system would ever really break on them. Maybe long after I'm dead, but that's not my problem. But you might want to consider that. That may be something you have to think about. If you're going out in the field and you got a DI gun and something on your DI gun breaks, it's easy to find parts for it. That being said, I think these two have about a 90% parts interchangeability. And the parts that would break, the bolt, something inside the trigger, the parts that really move are the same. So you'd be able to get them at the same place. If you could find them anyway, you'd probably be able to find them. It's usually not the gas system that goes bad. Something on the bolt face, like the ejector, extractor, and something in the trigger, which is, they're all the same parts. So, it is kind of a caveat to that situation. But ultimately, if you want something you could just pick up parts out of and build, the direct impingement system would be better between the two. Now, going back to something I said before about the price, I started looking this afternoon, and right now, actually, prices between the two are pretty close. I'm looking right now on Atlantic Firearms, and they have a Stag model, Model 8. It's gas piston rifle for about $1,400. That's a pretty good deal. Stag makes some pretty nice guns. I was going through some of these just to see, who makes a gas piston gun, and 2008, 2009, there were about 10. Now it's probably well over 100 different models from different makes and manufacturers. Just to name some off the top of my head, you've got FD Defense, you got Spikes, you got Bushmaster, there's the Ruger, which was one of the first ones. I think it's the SR556 model, I think. Comes in gas piston. You've got, of course, LWRC, which is the M6A2, what I've got here. They've got an M6A1, an M6A3. You've got LMT, who, of course, I showed you my DI gun. They got a gas piston system. What else we got? Barrett makes a gas piston. RRA, Smith & Wesson, Sabre Defense, Ares Defense. There are all kinds of different piston guns out there. And like I said, there's the Adams Arms Kit, the CMMG, the Osprey, Ares Defense, and TNW Firearms, I think, also makes a conversion kit. And the prices for both DI guns and piston guns is a lot closer now because, to be frank, they're all overpriced right now. So, if you're judging by price, now may not be a good time to decide. Ultimately, with the hobbyist, with the everyday shooter, and the person who occasionally will use it for self-defense, which is rare, but it happens. I think a DI gun would be fine. It'll cost you less money. It's a simpler design as far as less parts.
Sweet, huh?
It's easy to use, straightforward. Nothing wrong with it. It'll work just fine. There's plenty of really nice DI guns out there. Rock River, Colt, of course, Daniel Defense. The thing I like about the DI guns is you don't have to buy it all at once. All the guns I have bought, all the guns I have owned, whenever I modified them, something would not work. Just like a car. My Sega 308, I had a small problem with the spring came off the trigger wouldn't reset. Easy, simple fix, but I had to fix it. The washers, I had problems with some of them feeding hollow points. You see my brother's Galil, we still have problems with that gun we're working on. My Mosin Nagant had the extractor go bad, which fortunately it's a Mosin Nagant, which required fixing it with a hammer. Every gun I've worked on, I've had to do a minor modification to get it to work, except my AR-15. All my AR-15s, within, say, 60 rounds, worked right off the bat. Most of them worked from the time I started shooting. Give you an example. A lot of the AR-15 snobs will look at this and turn their noses because this is made by Delton, which is an inexpensive builder. This 20-inch AR-15 has never had a single jam. It's never had a single misfire. It's never double fed. It's fired every single time. And that's with steel case, with brass and steel case mixed, with the cheapest, crappiest Chinese surplus ammo. I run through that Delton, and it's ran every single time. Not a problem. I'm still amazed to this day. The LMT, right here, which you guys have already seen, the first 60 rounds, it had problems with the bolt carrier not closing all the way, which was another good reason to have that forward assist. There's nothing wrong with it, it just wasn't closing, it was just brand new, I had to work it in. After that, it's been flawless, shot every single time. But, like I said, just to give you, those are both DI guns. Now, my LWC, of course, is ran completely straight out of the box. But my point is all the other guns, change triggers, change stocks, change barrels, change optics, changed every single part, and they've always worked. So, you know, that's why when I people, you know, my AR-15 AK debate, that's why I stick with the AR side. For some reason, when I get them, and if I change parts, they always work. Both of these guns have always worked. All my AR-15s have worked really reliably, but like I said, the DI, the old 20-inch barreled DI, cheapest gun I got, I think I built it for $650, has been the most reliable of all the DI guns. But like I said, my LWCs also ran flawlessly since day one. So, if you're looking for reliability, there you go. They're both going to do a really good job. I think overall, the LWRC, my M6A2 would probably be the most reliable. But like I said, I'm still running this 20-inch Delton. I'm waiting for either one of them to have a fail to feed that's, you know, not a magazine issue. I've had a Tapco magazine that I could probably make both guns miss jam on. It's a crappy magazine. That doesn't count. If I'm a regular GIP mags, I'm waiting for one of them to fail. And to be honest, the 20-inch barrel one with iron sights shoots just as good as that 16-inch barrel chrome hammer forged LWRC with the red dot. They shoot almost exactly the same. And I am not that good of a shot with iron sights. So, you know, now magnified optics, I guess, is a different story. When I put a scope on my LWRC and I fired accuracy groups, it's not as good as the LMT with the same ammunition by a very small fraction. It might make a difference the farther out you go. We're talking 300 yards, 400 yards. The LMT shoots better groups DI, but it is a match gun. The LWRC is more of a combat, you know, gun. The LMT, I put a match barrel, match trigger. It does have a CMMG trigger in it. So, like I said, that may make a difference. I think I'm starting to ramble on this video. Ultimately, what I'm trying to the point is, we're trying to get to, the point I'm trying to get to, if I could say it here, is either gun will be fine. Figure on the cost, first of all. If you can afford the piston system and you don't need anything else, if you can buy a piston gun and you got money to buy the optics and everything else, go for it. If you are considering it and you're rolling in price into it and you need to buy optics or different parts you want to put on the gun,
and it's the choice between a piston gun, stock, and a DI gun already set up the way you want it. Go for the DI gun. You can always retrofit it later if you want, if you decide to get a suppressor later. To me, it's not worth the cost difference. I think DI gun will work fine for 99% of people out there. I know the military is going to the H&K 416, but remember that's the SEALs. Remember the military's also tried that X9, whatever it was, fish gun that they didn't like. They tried the SCAR, which apparently that's still up in the air. The ACR, I don't know if they even got trying that one. Just because the military uses it doesn't mean you need it, and just because the military uses it doesn't mean it's any good. Believe me, I've had plenty of GIs come back and shoot this gun and talk about how much better it was than their crappy Colts that they had out in the desert. Even that gun, the DI gun up here, the cranking gun, the guy on my last video, if you guys saw him, who left out his magazine when he was shooting that AMD 65, was talking about how much nicer that gun. And my gun's all beat up. That's the one I use the most. As far as like training and shooting and rolling through woods and stuff, and he was talking about, man, they're so much better than my Colt guns, are built by the lowest bidder. And rambling again. Anyway, that's what I have to say about it. DI guns work fine if you've got to get a piston. People who say they are jammed all the time, double feeds, they don't own them. They're getting that from Call of Duty or out-of-date history. As far as different calibers go, both guns come in 5.56, 223, 308. There's piston and, of course, DI 308s, 6.5 Grendel, all that other stuff. They're basically interchangeable, and you can retrofit them. So don't worry about that if you're thinking about a different caliber. 22, I think, is most of those I've actually seen are blowback, which is completely different. Not applicable to this video. So anyway, I hope that makes you helps you with your decision. And I hope it was useful. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Like I said, I think that wraps it up, and we'll see you guys later.